Hello everybody! In today's video I'm going to explain a feat called Superior Simultaneous Showdown from Flashpoint DLC, and it requires to engage all 3 bosses within 10 seconds and also finish all 5 of them within 10 seconds as well. Having the augments leveled up can definitely help you, as it gives extra stats and reduces 10% of the rogue's damage field attacks per rank. The group setup we used was 3 tanks, 3 DPSs, solo healer, and a buff troll. Some groups might run 2 heals instead of 1, which would slow down the burn, and others might prefer to run 2 tanks instead of 3, but that is also not recommended as it can end up being too messy near the end of the fight, so I suggest running with the setup we had. In the beginning of the second boss there will be 3 bosses in the field out of 7 possible options. You'll either get Pied Piper or Mirror Master standing on the far left, Trickster or Captain Boomerang standing on the far right, and Captain Cold, Heatwave, or the top standing in the middle. I'm gonna explain each boss mechanic individually before explaining the feat itself. I will start with the top. He has a random skill attack where he will charge a random person in the group, and he will do it a few times back to back to different members. After he charges the group or person, they need to move away from him, otherwise they might end up receiving more damage. At some point the top will start spinning, releasing green tornadoes and spheres at random directions, which can be hard to notice at times, but both of these attacks must be avoided. Next boss on the list is Trickster. He has a tickler attack that targets mostly the tank with. The damage from it is health based and it can kill you if you don't have a shield up. If the group members are close, Trickster will teleport behind everyone, and if you're not shielded, you might die. He will occasionally spawn adds that must be pulled, and he doesn't do ranged weapon attacks, so you can keep countering him by blocking. And now onto the next boss, Captain Boomerang. The first thing about him is that he has proximity aggro, so if you're close to him, he will target you instead of the tank. At some point he will put an arrow on the ground, which means that he's about to charge, and as long as he's aggroed by the tank, Boomerang should be targeting him and it doesn't do much damage. Throughout the fight with Boomerang there will be red circles that will appear on the ground, and if players stand on the edge of the circle, they will receive low damage over time. Another mechanic of his is the yellow puddles on the ground that can swiftly move you back and forth and at the same time do damage, so you gotta move out of them. Next boss is Pied Piper. He got 4 different mechanics, and the first one is a skull attack where he plays the flute, spins around, and white balls come out of him. If they hit you as a tank, they shouldn't be a problem, they will just damage and stun you for a second, however any other role might get killed if they are too close to the boss. The second mechanic is another skull attack where he will make a sound wave in front of him, and it doesn't do much damage to either of the group members, so you can neglect it. The third mechanic is adds that will spawn from time to time, and as usual they need to be pulled by the tank, and the fourth mechanic is the dangerous one. At some point, Pied Piper will pick a random player and make them dance. This attack one-shots unless it's the tank, and if there's anyone standing close to the dancing player, they can end up being one-shotted as well unless they got a shield up. A player who is not dancing must launch the boss to knock him out of the attack. The next boss is Mirror Master. One of the mechanics is him spawning mirrors around, which he will teleport to from time to time, and I've heard players say that the mirrors do damage if you stand too close to them, but I'm not sure if it's them doing damage or it's Mirror Master by teleporting to them. But in both cases, you should keep your distance from the mirrors. And in order to get rid of the mirrors, you must destroy all of them. He will also spawn mirror images of himself that will eventually die from splash damage or just shatter over time. He also got a skull attack, but it doesn't really do anything. Next one on the list is Heatwave, and with him there are a couple of things you must watch out for. One of them is a skull attack with grenades, throwing them at a random player in the group. Sometimes they detonate away from the group, sometimes they will detonate exactly on the player that he targets. Players need to keep moving while he's throwing the grenades, and if possible put a shield up or block because it can catch you off guard. He will be putting flaming area around him that will do damage, so the tank and the rest of the group members need to be staying out of it till it disappears. When you get Heatwave around 40%, he will start jumping to group members if they're in his range. It's usually a one-shot unless the targeted players are shielded or quickly react and move out of it. He can do it multiple times during the fight, so always be ready to move when you're burning him down or trying to finish him off. Last but not least, Captain Cold. He's very similar to Heatwave. He has icy area that does damage over time, so players need to stay away from it. He also got similar grenades, but they're not as dangerous as heat waves, and normally they explode away from the group, but they can still kill you, so try to avoid them. He will also shoot ice balls in random direction. They're not a one-shot, but they will damage you, so avoid those as well. If two bosses stay close to one another, they grant each other defense buffs, so all the damage they receive is drastically reduced. The tanks need to make sure that the bosses are separated, especially near the end of the fight, as I explained further. And now that we've covered the mechanics of the bosses, we can finally move on to the feat itself. In the beginning you get 3 random bosses out of the 7. One on the left, one on the right, and one in the middle. You need 1 tank on each boss. The 3 bosses must be engaged in 10 seconds of each other, so tanks need to communicate to make sure they launch them at the same time. Normally the group would start burning the boss in the middle, so the middle tank needs to pull the adds from the right and left side away from the other tanks so the group would get rid of them. After damaging the boss in the middle, another one will spawn either on the left, on the right, or in the middle, so it's really important for the tanks to communicate. If it spawns on the right tank can keep it. If it spawns on the left tank can keep it. And if it spawns in the middle, the tanks decide which one of them can take it. It's ideal for the tank in the middle to be left with only 1 boss at a time throughout the whole fight. After you get the boss to around 20% of their health, one of the tanks will give the tank in the middle one of the full health bosses they got, and will take the one with low health from them so the group can start DPSing. The process repeats with damaging the bosses to 20% and switching them around between all tanks until all of them are down to the same percentage. Once the group is done with this process, they go around single targeting each boss, getting them around 5%. The group needs to be careful so they don't overkill a boss. It's also recommended that you take your pets off so they wouldn't kill one of the bosses at this point as well. If one boss dies, the feat is pretty much ruined. After the bosses are around 5% each, the group backs up and the tanks bring all of the bosses to the positions near the middle. The group needs to split in 3 smaller groups. Everyone must have orbitals equipped, and if you have Dead King Scepter, that would also help. The tanks with 2 bosses will have 2 players with them, and the tank with 1 boss will have only 1 player with them. Once everyone is in position, DPSs need to burn the bosses without using their orbitals, and make sure if the top is one of them to kill him first using weapon attacks, as he can scale away from pretty much everything else, which may cause the feat to fail. And if Mirror Master is one of your bosses, make sure all the mirrors are destroyed, otherwise he can teleport away and yet again cause the feat to fail. Once one of the bosses is dead, hit your supercharges, drop your orbitals, summon your allies, basically make sure you commit to killing the bosses and don't stop attacking till the instant starts. But if you're 100% sure that you went over 10 seconds, then you need to wipe. I hope this explanation helps you get the feat or understand the mechanics of the fight in general. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.
'cause you know